All right, let's jump into this deep dive. Where are we going this time?
Well, it looks like we're heading into a future where humanity's left a ruined Earth behind and is trying to make a go of it out there in the stars.
And to navigate this future, we've got a couple of really interesting
Yeah,
sources.
really different sources, actually.
We've got excerpts from a YouTube video transcript. It's called Breeze's Video Game. And looks like it covers webisodes 1 through 7, gameplay, commentary, the soundtrack,
Oh,
all in there, yeah. And then to make things even more interesting, we've got these excerpts from a book. It's called Word Crack by Joe.Omnibus.
huh. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's not entirely clear what it is. It's like a collection of notes, maybe song lyrics, who knows?
Sounds like a challenge.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're up for it. I mean, just
Yeah.
from these initial glimpses, it seems like we're dealing with a really complex and interconnected narrative, right?
Yeah, definitely. Lots of pieces to this puzzle, but I think we can start to see some common threads.
Right. And one of the big ones that jumps out is this idea of humanity's exodus from Earth.
Right.
Like both sources kind of point to this catastrophic event. They call it the cloud wave. Happened back in 2099 and forced everyone to flee.
And from what I'm gathering, it seems like it's the year 2220 in WordCrack. And those folks, the descendants of those who escaped, they're living in these massive spaceships called dragons.
Yeah, dragons. It's a pretty evocative name, right? And it gets even more interesting when you realize they use that term dragon for more than just the big ships.
Oh, how so?
Well, it seems like smaller ships and their crews are also called dragons. So it's not just about size, it's almost like a social or cultural thing.
That does add a layer of complexity.
Yeah,
Makes you wonder about the dynamics between these different dragons, right?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, are they competing for resources or is there this sense of unity, given their shared history?
A lot of questions there.
Definitely. And speaking of different dragons, the sources introduce us to one in particular, the Farstarosinante.
The Farstarosinante.
Yeah, and this ship, it has this really diverse crew, and they seem to be at the heart of a lot of these stories we're going to be uncovering.
Yeah, the crew's backgrounds definitely piques my interest. We have members from Mars, Ceres, and even the asteroid belt,
Yeah.
all bringing potentially, their own unique perspectives to the table.
It really makes you think, even though humanity's scattered across the solar system, those old divisions, those tensions, they might still be simmering beneath the surface.
Could be.
Right. Like the sources describe this really tense incident at Ceres Station.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Critical air duct failure, needs immediate repairs. And you start to wonder, is this just a mechanical issue? Or is it a symptom of something deeper, like some political tension between Earth and Mars?
Yeah, it's pretty clear that resource ownership and responsibility are still sticking points between those two, even all this time later.
It's almost like that whole incident at Ceres Station is this microcosm of this larger power struggle that's still playing out.
Yeah, I could see that.
Especially when you factor in this mysterious soldier stationed at Ceres. This soldier drops this cryptic info about a plan to potentially sacrifice the current spacefaring civilization, all to save their ancestors back on Earth.
Wow, that's a heavy concept to grapple with. Sacrificing the present for the past makes you think about, the value we place on different generations and how far we'd go to preserve our history.
It's really thought-provoking, isn't it? And then, to add another link of intrigue, we have Dr. Spark.
Oh, Dr. Spark, quite the character.
He's this brilliant young scientist on the Farstarosinante, and the sources really highlight his intellect. I mean, how he single-handedly made interplanetary spaceflight viable and even invented a superluminal communication system using quantum entanglement.
Quite the resume, huh? But what really stood out to me was his obsession, I guess you could say, with time travel.
Yeah.
He seems to believe it might be possible to undo the damage done to Earth. It makes you wonder if his drive to achieve such breakthroughs is fueled by, a sense of guilt for humanity's role in causing the cloud wave.
Yeah, like he's trying to redeem humanity in a way. And speaking of time travel, get this. That mysterious soldier we met at Ceres, well, the sources reveal that he's actually a time traveler named TT.
A time traveler named TT.
Really? Yeah, and it seems like TT is trying to prevent some kind of catastrophe. He's seen firsthand what messing with time can do, and let me tell you, it ain't pretty.
Wow, that opens up a whole new can of worms.
Huh.
What sort of consequences has he seen, and what does this mean for the Farstarosinante and their mission?
So many questions. And just as we're starting to wrap our heads around the whole time travel thing, the Farstarosinante gets new orders.
The orders? Where to?
They're being sent to the Rigel K star system. It's a journey of 2 light years.
2 light years. That's a massive undertaking, even with advanced tech. It begs the question, what's so important about Rigel K? Is it connected to these warnings about time travel?
Right. Like, what are the risks they're willing to take to get there? What awaits them on the other side? It's a complete mystery. But before we can even dive into that, the narrative shifts and we're introduced to a completely different perspective.
Oh, tell me more.
We meet Bingo. He's an engineer on a much older ship called the 551. It's 551, if you're looking for it in the book. And it operates under a completely different social structure compared to the Far Star Ascendante.
Interesting. How so?
Well, for one, they have these really unique voting rituals. And their hierarchy, it's much more elaborate and formalized. It's almost like they're clinging to the traditions of the past more tightly than the folks on the Far Star Ascendante.
Makes you wonder, is that their way of coping with the trauma of the cloud wave? A way to find order and stability in a world that's been completely upended?
That's a really insightful thought. And their reverence for the ship itself is something else. It's not just a vessel to them, it's a symbol of their history, their resilience, their connection to the generations that came before.
Almost like the Fifivwan itself represents their entire society. Like their values and way of life are embodied in that ship.
And speaking of the past, Bingo and his companions stumble upon something pretty incredible hidden within the depths of the Fifivwan. They find the box cutter.
The box cutter, what is that?
It's an ancient spacecraft. Dates back to the late 20th century. Can you believe that? Like a relic from a completely bygone era. Their reaction to it is priceless. It's like they've unearthed a lost treasure.
I can imagine. Stumbling upon a piece of history like that, a tangible link to humanity's past, it would be awe-inspiring.
Absolutely. And this discovery takes on an even deeper meaning when you learn about the time wave.
The time wave.
Yeah, this mysterious force that's threatening to wipe out the spacefaring civilization we've been talking about. And to survive, they've resorted to drawing lots to determine who gets sent to colonize a new planet in the Rigel K system.
It's a desperate measure, isn't it? Sending people off into the unknown, hoping they can escape this impending doom.
It really underscores the precariousness of their situation, doesn't it? They've got all this advanced technology, they spread out amongst the stars, and yet they're still vulnerable to forces beyond their control.
And faced with that kind of existential threat, they're forced to make these incredibly difficult choices. Choices that will determine the fate of their entire civilization. It's a lot to bear.
It really is. And with that, we're left wondering, who gets chosen for this perilous mission? What's waiting for them on this new planet? Can they outrun the time wave and carve out a new future for humanity?
So many questions, and we've only just scratched the surface. I'm ready to dive deeper.
Me too. Let's take a break and come back to unravel the next chapter of this incredible story.
Well, before we took that little break, we left things hanging in the balance, didn't we?
We did, with that time wave looming, ready to wipe out a whole civilization, and this desperate scramble to get to a new planet in the Rigel K system.
That's a lot to take in, honestly.
I know, right? Colonists staring down an unknown future, the Fifivwan with all its ancient tech and strange rituals, and the Far Star Ascendante still blasting through space toward who knows what. Where do we even begin?
Well, maybe with the colonists themselves. The sources tell us they arrive at this planet, New Neptune, 6 big islands, and they pick 3 of them to settle on. We even see Bingo, now he's going by route, adjusting to life on this new world. It's kind of a fresh start for humanity, a chance to build something new, something better.
A do-over after the cloud wave messed things up so badly. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are they bringing with them to this new planet? Not just tools and supplies, but their baggage, their ideas, their conflict.
Like, do the old power struggles just pop up again in this new place?
Exactly. And speaking of power struggles, let's talk about Marco Polo.
Marco Polo. What does he have to do with any of this?
I know, it seems like a weird jump, but the sources introduce this whole parallel narrative based on Marco Polo's travels way back in the 13th century.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the connection between, a 13th century explorer and a civilization trying to outrun a time wave?
Well, the author seems to be drawing some pretty clear parallels between Marco Polo's observations about human nature, things like greed and ambition, and the stuff that caused all those tensions at Ceres Station.
I see where you're going with this.
It's like, no matter how far we go, how advanced we get, we still carry those same flaws with us.
Yeah, like human nature is this constant, even as everything else changes.
And those flaws, those same old patterns, can screw up even the most amazing achievements.
Like building a whole new civilization on another planet, maybe.
Exactly. Technology can't fix everything, right? Our human stuff, that's what's going to make or break us in the end.
Makes sense.
And speaking of human nature, buckle up because the sources throw another storyline at us. This one focuses on a guy named Joey.Omnibus.
Joe.Omnibus. Okay, what's his deal?
This dude is from Darby, Pennsylvania. And his story is wild. I'm talking time travel, robot assassins, bumping into historical figures. I mean, he even meets Abraham Lincoln.
Whoa, hold on. Robot assassins and Abraham Lincoln in the same story.
You better believe it. And guess what? He even crosses paths with Marco Polo. It's crazy. The author is mixing history, fantasy, sci-fi. It's like a genre blender on high speed.
I'm getting whiplash just thinking about it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's not all just fun and games. The sources also touch on, the psychological toll of time travel, how it can mess with your head.
Yeah, like the disorientation, trying to keep your memory straight when reality keeps shifting around you.
Yeah, exactly. Makes you wonder if all that time travel is worth the mental cost.
Good point. And while we're talking about costs, what about the cost of building and maintaining those giant dragons? I mean, the sources make it pretty clear it takes a ton of resources and manpower to keep those things running.
Yeah, it makes you think about sustainability. Like, were there corners cut? Did some people get left behind in the rush to build these space cities?
We don't really get those answers in these sources.
True, but it adds another layer to think about, right? It raises questions about the choices we make as a society, what we're willing to sacrifice, who pays the price for progress. Heavy stuff.
Definitely. We might not have answers for this fictional world, but those are questions we got to ask about our own world, too.
Absolutely. And while we're getting all serious, it's important to remember the sources don't shy away from the emotional weight these characters carry. There's grief for the Earth they lost, anxiety about the time wave, and this constant uncertainty about the future. Heavy stuff.
It is, but it's also kind of reassuring in a way, right? Because it shows that even with all the fancy tech and space travel, these are still real people with real emotions, just like us.
I get that. It's like the human experience. It's this constant, no matter how much the world changes around us.
Exactly. But amidst all the chaos and uncertainty, there are those glimmers of hope, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the colonists, finding their footing on New Neptune, building new lives. Or the Farstar Rocinante crew, facing danger head-on, but facing it together.
And even Joey.Omnibus, finding ways to laugh, to keep his sense of wonder, even as he's jumping through time.
It's like the author's saying, even when things are dark, the human spirit can still find a way to shine through.
It's a reminder to keep looking for those bright spots, right? Even when things seem bleak.
Definitely. We all need that reminder sometimes.
But back to the Farstar Rocinante for a minute. They're still on their way to Rigel K, and we're still in the dark about what's waiting for them out there. What are your thoughts?
Tough to say for sure, but the sources do drop some hints, like that interstellar gravitic engine. I mean, that suggests they have tech way beyond anything we can imagine right now.
And then there's the possibility of alien life, right? Could Rigel K be home to other intelligent beings?
Now that would be a game changer.
Right. Imagine first contact. It would rewrite everything we know about our place in the universe.
I can only imagine. It'd be pretty amazing and pretty terrifying too, probably.
For sure. But it also speaks to that human need to explore, right? That drive to push beyond what we know, to see what's out there no matter the risk.
Yeah, that's a theme running through all these stories, isn't it? Whether it's venturing to new planets, messing with time, or just challenging our own assumptions about the world.
It's that spirit of discovery that keeps us going, right? That keeps things interesting. But I keep coming back to that time wave. What do you think it is? And can they stop it?
Honestly, the sources are pretty vague about the time wave. It's almost like the author wants us to fill in the blanks, to come up with our own theories.
Like it's part of the mystery?
Exactly. And that makes it even scarier, right? It could be anything. Natural disaster, tech gone wrong, some ripple effect from all the time travel shenanigans. Who knows?
Yeah, that uncertainty definitely adds to the tension. It's like a ticking time bomb that could go off at any moment.
It makes every decision, every action feel so much more important.
And do you think there could be a connection between the time wave and Dr. Sparks' time travel research?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Could his attempts to change the past be what caused this whole mess?
It's a question that kind of hangs over the whole narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are these characters shaping events? Or are they just caught in something much bigger than themselves?
It's the age-old question, right? Fate
right.
versus free will. And these stories really bring that debate to life.
They do. But as we dig deeper into the sources, there's another element that keeps popping up music. It's everywhere.
Yeah, you're right. From the video game soundtrack to the songs Bingo or Root, right? Music seems to be woven into the fabric of their lives.
It's like no matter how far they travel or how much tech they have, music is still this universal language.
It connects them, even when they're separated by time and space.
Exactly. It gives them comfort, helps them deal with the hard stuff, lets them express themselves. It's kind of amazing that in a future with holographic displays and interstellar travel, music still matters so much.
It shows how powerful music is, right?
Yeah.
It touches something deep inside us, something that doesn't change no matter how much the world around us does.
And it's not just about listening to music. These characters are writing songs, playing instruments. It's like music is woven into their culture, their way of life.
It's how they connect with each other, how they make sense of their world.
It's a reminder that art and creativity, they matter. Even in a world facing these huge existential threats, the human spirit finds ways to express itself, to find beauty and meaning.
Yeah. It's a reminder to never underestimate the power of art, even when things seem hopeless.
It's a powerful message, and it's something we should all keep in mind, even in our own lives. Back again for the final stretch of our deep dive.
It's been a wild ride through this fictional world, right?
Yeah.
Ruined Earth, massive spaceships, time travel paradoxes, the whole shebang. But before we call it a wrap, there are a couple of things I'm still chewing on.
Yeah, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of some of these ideas.
For sure. One thing that keeps bugging me is that whole Seven of Ends motif in Joe.Omnibus's story. Ah, yeah, the seven eggs.
It pops up in the weirdest places. Do you think it's like a secret code the author wants us to crack? Or are they just messing with us?
It's definitely a detail that makes you want to look for a deeper meaning, right? Like, in a lot of cultures, seven is this significant number, representing completeness or spiritual stuff. Maybe the author's trying to tell us there's a hidden order behind all the craziness. Like, even the random stuff is part of some bigger plan.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle waiting to be solved. And that feeling of mystery, it kind of extends to the time wave itself. We still don't really know what it is or where it came from.
Right. Is it some natural thing, a tech disaster? Or did someone mess with time so badly they broke reality?
I mean, the sources keep things pretty vague.
Which makes it even creepier, you know? This big, scary unknown hanging over everything.
Yeah, like a cosmic sword dangling by a thread.
Exactly. It's this reminder that no matter how advanced we get, there are still things we can't control.
We can't escape the consequences, right? But speaking of tech, we've seen some crazy stuff in these sources, like the ancient box cutter versus the Farstar Sonante's interstellar gravitic engine. Do you think the author is making a point about our relationship with tech through those contrasts?
You know, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, it's interesting. On the one hand, there's that wonder and excitement when they find the box cutter, this ancient piece of tech that represents human ingenuity.
Right.
But then you have the dragons, these megastructures that keep humanity alive, but also kind of separate them from nature.
Yeah, it's like technology can be both amazing and kind of dangerous at the same time.
It's a tool, right?
Yeah.
But any tool can be used for good or bad.
We're seeing that play out right now in our own world. It makes you think about how we use tech and what the consequences might be down the line. Pretty relevant stuff considering the world we live in.
Totally.
Yeah.
And speaking of relevant stuff, we've been dancing around the theme of loss a lot. Loss of Earth, loss of people, loss of the familiar.
Yeah, it's a thread that runs through all these stories.
But we've also seen how people adapt, how they find ways to keep going.
Like those colonists on New Neptune building a new life, the Farsta Rocinante crew facing danger together, Joe.Omnibus finding a way to laugh even when he's lost in time.
It's inspiring, isn't it? No matter how bad things get, there's still hope, still that human spark that keeps pushing us forward.
It's a good message to remember, for sure. Makes you want to believe that we can find a way through the mess we're in our own world.
Me too. It gives me hope.
Well, we've come to the end of our deep dive, haven't we? Explored some pretty deep questions about time, space, tech, and what it means to be human.
It's been quite a journey.
But before we sign off, one last question for our listener. Could these stories, with all their crazy time travel and interstellar adventures, actually have something to teach us about our own world and the challenges we're facing?
That's the power of good storytelling, right? It takes us to these fantastical places, but it also shines a light on our own reality.
Makes us think about the choices we make, the things we value, the future we're building. It might all be fiction, but maybe, just maybe, there's some truth hidden in there too.
Maybe a lot of truth.
And on that note, it's time to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for those stories that make you think, make you feel, and make you see the world in new ways.